Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my studio. This is Paint with Lovejoy. Thanks so much for joining me. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to the channel and check out the other videos. And if you're here for a second, third, or fourth time, thank you so much for coming back and getting creative. Hey guys, this is going to be another fun painting. So grab your supplies, transfer your traceable to your surface, and as always, make sure you take your progress photos. Now on mine, I did go over my traceable lines with a black Sharpie marker, and that's for those of you that are going to pause the video and draw what you see. All right, so we are starting with the background. I'm using the large flat brush and going with a medium teal. And if you want to keep with primary colors, you can use blue instead of teal. And we're going to be filling in the whole space from the edges of our fish to the edges of our canvas. And if you're on a stretch canvas, I do recommend that you carry this color around the edges of the canvas. I also recommend that if you're using student grade paint to apply your paint a little bit thicker than you may feel comfortable with. It'll help with the blending and it'll give you a little better coverage. And I am using student grade paint in today's video. Now, as I go to fill in the background, you'll notice that I mix the color 2 or 3 times on the plate. So if you end up doing that, don't feel like you have to get the exact same color every single time you mix it. We are going to do a method of what we call wet on wet blending, to where we add some different shades into the wet paint of the background and gives us some nice variety. Now, if you need to, feel free to grab one of the smaller brushes as you get into little nooks and crannies around our fish today. Um, and if you happen to overlap into the inside of your subject matter, don't stress. We'll be able to put paint and colors on top of that. Now, if you are one of my first time painters and you're holding your breath, take a big inhale, relax. I'm really proud of you for painting. Painting gets easier with more and more practice. All right, so as I was talking about earlier, the wet on wet blending, you can see here where I'm just literally slapping that blue in a few places. Then I wipe my brush off and go back with light pressure and blend that blue into the base color. You can do the same thing with white if you want to introduce some other colors, some more teal or purple, but you can do whatever you want to your background now while it's wet. Then we'll let it dry before we move into the next step. But this is one of the really, really fun aspects of painting your background, is playing with this wet on wet blending method. So enjoy this process and just get it to where you like it. It does not have to look exactly like mine on the screen. And when you are done, I do recommend pausing the video, taking your progress photo, and we're going to move into the first layer on our fish. And I am moving down to the medium flat brush. And I am basically, for the fish, we're going to be using primary colors. So I'm making my own orange, and that's going to be a mixture of red and yellow. And I prefer more of a burnt orange, so there's more red in mine. If you want a lighter orange for your fish, go right ahead and make it the color that you want. Same if you want to do a different color, if you want to do a purple or a red beta. And then here I'm grabbing some of that direct red. The direct red's going to give a little bit of a hue difference compared to the orange that we were just using. And I'll kind of go a little back and forth as we do the fins on our beta fish. And as I mentioned earlier, I am using student grade paint, so it is on the transparent side, so I'm going to do 2 layers of this. So this first layer is going to get us some good practice and start to define some of our shading and highlight elements. And we'll be doing that in just a moment. So again, right now we're just taking that red paint, that medium flat brush, and we're getting our first layer on the canvas. Again, feel free to apply it a little bit thicker just to make it a little bit easier for the application. Now going back to that orange that we were using for the first part, and if you have to mix your shade of orange a second time, and if it's lighter or darker, that's okay. Again, we're just getting that first base layer on there. And I am painting this pretty quickly, so all my sections are still wet. Aside from my background, I did let that dry. So if you're painting faster or slower than me, that's okay. Just kind of embrace where you're at. Now we're going to do a little bit of shading. And like I said, we're using our primary colors. So I'm grabbing a tiny, tiny amount of blue. And I want you to observe where I place the blue, Then I'm going to wipe off my brush, and then with a light pressure, notice the direction I move my brush to blend it into the base color. This is good practice. We're going to do this a second time. So right now it's good practice just kind of getting comfortable with this wet on wet blending aspect. And essentially what we're doing for this blue area, the shadow area, we're imagining where the fins are meeting the body and where the darkest shadow would be. All right, so good place to pause the video, take your progress photo, let it fully dry, and then now we're going to start our second layer on here. You do want your first layer to dry before you put your second layer on. And I'm going back to making that orange, and that is yellow and red mixture. Again, if it's lighter or darker than your first layer, that's okay. And just even take notice of how much better it looks, how much more opaque coverage we have with this second layer. And this is something that you'll run into a lot as you use student grade acrylics. So don't be afraid to do a couple of layers on your painting as needed. So now I'm grabbing that small pointy brush and the direct yellow. We're going to put a highlight on here. And as I do this today, again, I want you to strengthen your power of observation, observe where I place this on the canvas, and mimic that to the best of your ability. This does not have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to look like mine. This is just giving you an idea of how to do these shades. So same thing, we're going back to that blue, kind of placing it where the body of the fish is curving a little bit. And then I want you to notice that I wipe off my brush, and then with that light pressure, notice how I'm kind of blending and the direction that I'm blending that blue into the base paint. Now, if you are finding that you get a lot of that blue paint on there, wipe off any excess and then go back and blend. You will notice that with your darker colors, a little bit of pigment actually goes a long way when you're mixing it into your base color. Again, this gets more comfortable with more painting practice. And using a little of the residual that was on my brush to kind of get this area right here. It is pretty light. Um, and again, just kind of giving a hint of a shadow on that area. Again, remember to breathe, inhale, relax. You're doing a great job. It's kind of nice to get lost in the process of painting and forget about the rest of the world for a little bit. So same thing, my paint is still wet. I'm grabbing some of that white just for a little bit more of an intense highlight, placing it on there, and then just kind of tapping it into that wet paint. And you'll notice how quickly that white paint kind of changes the shade and does not stay pure white anymore. Again, you're just building your knowledge about wet on wet blending. All right, so a good place coming up to pause the video, take your progress photo. You guys are doing a great job. Be kind to yourself as you go through this process. And we're going to move back into the red and orange mixture. And again, I'm going a little more red on this one, and we're going to go back to each of the fins. And just like we did on the first layer, we're going to lay this base color on there, and then we're going to go in with some blue for the shadows and blend it into the wet paint, and then we'll use some yellow for the highlights. And by getting these three shades, a highlight, a main color, and a shadow, this is how we create this illusion of depth. So here, going back to that blue, still using the pointy brush, or the medium flat brush, whichever one you're on. Again, I want you to observe where I place each of those lines. Then you're going to wipe off any excess paint on from your brush, and then go back with light pressure and just slowly kind of push this new color into that base color. And it's okay to kind of get out of your chair and look at your painting from a distance, assess, do you need to do a little more blending, maybe a little less, and then go back and adjust your painting. And we're going to keep with this same format and this same concept as we go through the whole rest of this betta fish. Again, just building on your skills and getting more comfortable with the process of painting. And this is another reason why I encourage that you find creative outlets on a regular basis. The only way you're going to get better is with practice. So here, clean the brush off. I grabbed some of that yellow. Again, you're going to notice how quickly that yellow diffuses and no longer stays that pure, that bright yellow. So if you end up losing that brightness, just reapply your yellow and move your brush less strokes. So again, repeating that process, going to that red orange, putting the base on. And if you outlined your traceable with the Sharpie marker or the black lines, just make sure that these colors are going right on top of those black lines. If you don't have those on yours, just ignore the part that I just said. All right, so fill it in basically kind of those whole bottom fins, and then we're going to go back and add some shading. Here we go, and I do like going back to that small pointy brush, so I'm just applying a small amount. Again, just kind of putting them in a few distinct spaces, similar to what we did for the first round, and then we'll go back and blend it into the base. As you do this, your muscles are getting comfortable with holding the brush, they're getting comfortable with the pressure, they're getting comfortable with how much pressure when you're doing the blending. So be kind to yourself if this is your first painting and you're not quite comfortable holding the brush. The more that you do it, the easier it gets. And the next time that you go to paint, what you're learning in today's painting will make more sense, and that muscle memory will kind of kick in and be like, I remember how to hold it, I remember the amount of pressure to blend, and I'm getting more comfortable with it. So painting's not about being perfect, but just getting more comfortable with your process in the creative realm. And that's another reason why I encourage that you find regular creative outlets for yourself. All right, so this is taking shape nicely. We're going to go back to the red. I want to beef that up. It's almost a little too dark. And again, I'm being rather generous with the amount of red paint that I'm putting on here. If you like yours as is, or you want to introduce a different color, go right ahead and do that. Now I'm using that red for kind of that front part of that fin. And feel free to pause the video even when I don't recommend it and study where you see I applied something on the canvas, and then add that to yours. Now we're grabbing that yellow, kind of putting it on the ends of the fins. And again, being pretty kind of generous with the amount of yellow because I know it's going to diffuse into the red orange. And then wipe that brush off. And again, with light pressure, you're kind of dragging that yellow paint into the darker color. And with more pressure or more brush strokes, you're going to lose some of that yellow color and it's going to blend faster. So again, just observe what you're doing, take note, and know that you're going to keep growing your skills with each painting you complete. All right, so making our orange again, we have that one last fin, that top fin, and then we're going to add some more details in later, but this is the last one for the second layer. And this orange was a little bit lighter, and then now we're going to grab the red for the shadow instead of the blue. There we go. And again, that using that pointy brush, just notice where those lines are. Then we're going to wipe off the brush and kind of squish this red into that base orange paint. If you are finding that your brush is shaky as you're going to do this, that means you're holding your breath. So if you exhale as you touch the brush to the canvas, that will help your process. And again, doing the opposite, grabbing that yellow, putting it on the ends of the fins, giving a highlight value. Guys are doing great. This is a good looking betta fish already, and we haven't even given him eyeballs yet. All right, and then again, after you add that yellow, wipe that brush off, and then just with that light pressure, blend it into the base. And then pause your video, take your progress photo. I do recommend letting this fully dry. And then we're going back and making that orange. We're going to give him a little side fin here, and add a little bit more to that left fin to the left of his head. And a few of these parts will overlap the part, the fin that's kind of on the length of the body, and that's why you wanted your paint to dry before you moved into this step. So now using that red, just getting a bit more of the fancy flair for this betta fish, and then going back in with our blue with some shading. And just like earlier, kind of placing that blue on there, wiping it off, and then pushing it into the base color. As you look at this painting from a distance of 5 to 10 feet away, this is the normal viewing distance for most things in life, and especially artwork, and it starts to make a little more sense, some of the shading that you do when you look at it from a distance. So don't be afraid to get out of your chair and check it out from about 5 feet away. So still moving in, getting some of those highlights in there, same concept as all the rest of the fins that we were working on. And then that little fin on the right-hand side of the body. Then we're going to pause the video, take another progress photo, again, fully let this dry. And this is the place where we're going to actually introduce black into the composition. And we're going to do an outline. So I am using that small pointy brush, playing with the pressure. Light pressure will create a bit of a skinnier line. A little more pressure will create a wider line. And we're basically just kind of redoing that traceable. We're going to put some details on there. We'll get some eyes. You do not have to add all the lines that I add, or you don't even have to add them at all if you don't want to. If you want to do this in a different color, go right ahead and do that as well. But your call how much you outline and how much you add to the painting. Again, if your brush is shaky as you're going to do this, that means you're holding your breath, so exhale as you touch the brush to the canvas. You are also welcome to rotate the canvas. I keep it in the same position just because I'm filming the video, but if you need to turn it sideways or upside down or put it on your lap to make it easier as you do some of these lines, go right ahead and adjust to your liking, to your needs. Another thing to kind of keep notice is you can add a little bit of water to your paint if it's pretty thick. That will give you a little more fluidity. If you have super runny paint, don't add too much water to it because it'll just not be as saturated of color and be a little harder to work with. All right, again, pause the video as needed just so you can observe a little bit more details for wherever you happen to be on the outlining process. All right, I'm really proud of you guys. This is coming along nicely. And again, hopefully you are finding regular creative outlets for yourself. And I do recommend that you paint with your friends, your family, your kids. This is just great quality time together and a nice way to spend doing something physically with your hands, something tactile. So again, as we get into the details of the eye, feel free to reference the traceable or let the video play for a little bit and then pause the video so you can see where your details and your lines are going to be. Another thing to kind of check out for your brush, if you kind of get into a groove and maybe your lines just start getting a little bit wider and wider, take a look at your brush. Do you have a lot of buildup on your paint, on your brush? And if you do, wipe it off and then grab some fresh paint. Sometimes when you have that buildup on there, it spreads the bristles apart, and that's why you get wider lines. So a little bit of brush maintenance there. All right, looking good. We're going to pause the video, take a progress photo, and our final step is going to be some pure white and some highlights. Again, just pause the video when we're done here and observe where I place each of these, and you're still working on that light pressure. And this is kind of the brightest spot, and it really kind of makes it pop. If you're inclined to put a white highlight somewhere, I do not. Trust your instincts and go ahead and add it to where you're inclined to add it. Please email me photos of what you paint. I enjoy seeing those and just hearing your stories and seeing your growth. So email me photos, paintwithlovejoy@gmail.com. And again, as always, please keep finding creative outlets for yourself. All right, this is coming along nicely, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and spending some time and just kind of getting creative and escaping the world for a little bit. Makes life a little bit better. So until the next painting, cheers. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the process of painting and I hope you are happy with how your paintings turned out. I'm really proud of you for getting creative. As you're uploading these to social media, please tag me at or hashtag paintwithlovejoy or email me your pictures, paintwithlovejoy@gmail.com. I really enjoy seeing them. I try to post them on social media to encourage other beginner painters to try the process of painting. But please share this with your community as well. Anybody who is kind of scared to paint, share your experience with them and let them know kind of how much you benefited from it and how much you enjoyed the process. So kind of share the fun. With that being said, if you have any comments, questions, feedback, things that you want me to paint in the future, please leave a comment. I try to respond to everybody as quickly as I can. And any of the future suggestions for paintings, I add that to my production list and get to them as quickly as I can. So in the meantime, please keep getting creative. Let me know how you're doing. And until next time, cheers.